Ek Tandirat the January 1982 Key Jab Duala Galigoritain Barbara or Annette Colorado Kabarf Sadek Bahadi Raston Par Hitchhiking Karta Hula Pataho Gayi Donoki Kahanian Ek Duser Se Juda Tanahi The Maga Anka and Ahir Ek He Jasa Ta Salinbod Preserved DNA Ni is Case Ko Soljan Main Ekahem Kurda Ada Kiya. Barbara Oberholzer Jais PR Se Bobby Jo Kaha Jotatha 1952 Main Peter Hui Thi Jab Wo 29 Sal Ki Thi to Uska Jeevan Racine Wisconsin or Alma Colorado Kabich Bantabik Hamiln Whale Ko Uski Maskarahat Uski Kuli Bochet or Gar Mizaj Niapna Dayat Colorado Anek Kbod Uski Zendagi Main Ekinai Roshni Ihni Ishuru at Barbara Ni Breckenridge Main Ek Mining Company Main Receptionist Kinok Rishuru Ki Apni Talmon Main Wolagan or Zimadari Se Kati Thi Jiska Asar Logan Par B Patatha Hali Manus Promotion Milatha Ekaisa Paljinosk Chair Pafaka or Umid Ba Dithi Uska Korea Nayi Onche Itaraf Bedraha Tha Barbara Apni Poti Jeff Oberholzer Kesoth Alma Main Reddy Unka Rishta Mazbut or Pya Baramana Jota Tha Iktusa Kiazit or Samaj Partikahua Us Wakt Wahan Hitchhiking Am Bot Thi Log IC Kater Kirup Main Nahi Boki Zarut or Routine K Hissa Monti the Lekan Barbara Kejevan K is Asan Ceylani Whale Routine Main Ikan Decha Hathra Dirdia Karib Arahath Kayapata Thaki Jais Azadi or Sukun K Rup Main G Rocky Thi Woes in Dagiab Oschin Lee Jayaji Annette K Shni K Jam 16 September 1960 KO Iowa Main Huatha Bokpunka Ziada Hissa Osun Wisconsin Main Guzara Jab Usan Zendagi Koapni Tariq Sajin Kafazla Kia to Wo Colorado Key Frisco Town Main Bus Gay Nara Miza Jawar Shante Swabhav Kabawa Juad Usk Sapanbad the Wo X Scene Flight Attendant Banachati Thi. Annette Din Main Frisco K Holiday in Main Housekeeper K Holiday Comkati Thi or Sham Koek Local Bar Main Cocktail Waitress K Rup Main Shifsleti Thi Kar Nahon Ki Warja Say Wo Be Hitchhiking Par Nerbhar Thi Heiza Storke Kailog the Enet Manat Sakabi Pichnai Hati Usk Sapan Sidi or Softi Lekan Wokal Kabiaya Hainahi the 6th of January 1982 29 Sol Ki Barbara Oberholzer Breckenridge Say South Ki Teraf Hitchhiking Car Rahi Thi US Rodas Akri Bar Sham 750 Bajik Aspazeha Gaya Jabwo Village Pub Main Apni Doston K Soth Kuch Drinks K Ligay I Thi Jabwo Garnahi Loti Tuask Poti Jeff or Kuch Karibi Doston Ni for Onuski Tala Sharukadi ... Asterisk soft Suspenseful music builds Jab Barbara Oberholzer Rot Bar Garnahi Lauti Tuask Shoha Jeff Ko Foreign Andisha Hogaya Kikach to Gadbad High Unkad Der Duzer Din the 7th of January Shamlag Bak Pukul Tigabaje Ek Hakikat Bangaya Barabara Kilash Breakin Rajas Sadias miles south Colorado State Highway 9 KP Barf Sadek Kabal Party Mili Yajagahuja Pass Ki Summit Se Kach 300 feet Dorothy EXICI Ilaka Jo 11,000 feet Kiunchai Pa Tha Sin Pa Pahunj Thai Investigators Ko Andaza Hogaya Kikuch Bahut Bruhu Ahai Wakt Ko Tyon Kat Hu Patachala K Jab Babar Ki Yonli Gai Taban Herathar Sardi Apni Karam Sima Parthi or Barfgura Hai Thi Medical Examiner Nitas Deek Kike Barbara Kassin Main Goli Mari Gay Thiek Hangan Se Jo Uski Mao Kasaba Bunny Ik Dusri Goli Usk Doyen Sin Ko Chukar Nikal Gaithi Yabi Tazdik Hua Ku Susi Jaga Goli Mari Gaithi Jahan Uska Jism Mila. Barbara Kajism Jamchukatha or Uskahoths Ziptai Se Bond Karek Dusser Kapos Rak Gay the Sin Parkuch Chilling Clues B Mile Ekarin Rung Ka Booty Sock Ek Winter Glove Parkun Kadag or Zaman Parek Kachain Uska Perths Wahan Nahitha Hirat Kibot Yathiki US Kapus Asjagase 20-mile door US Highway 285 Pa Denver Ki Taraf Mila Hatia Kahathia Kabinahi Mila or Barfili Hawan Ni Kizibi or Sabut Ko Dundan Ka Moka Nahi Dai Usirot 21 Sol Kianet Shnibi Breckenridge Kie South Main Hitchhiking Car Rahi Thi 4:45 p.m. K Ospos US XC Local Pharmacy Se Nikalti Dekagoya Thashayad Apni Kisi Job Pa Yarahi Thi Jubwo Egoldeen.com Par Nahi Pahunchi Tuask Manager Nioski Missing Report Laj Karwa Di Mahin Guzarte Gay Jab nahi. Mile Fear, the 3rd of July 1982, Takraban, Anamahin Bad, EK13, Sal K Ladki Nianet, Kilosh, Sacramento Creek, Kathand Panyon Main Pi, Ya Ilika Breckenridge, say 20-mile Dortha, Barfa Pani, Neoskism, Kyokuchev Tak, Preserve Kiothagis investigators Kyokuchev's physical evidence Milsaka Enetka Kaptia Schism Party, Leakin, Woe, Bikahu or disheveled the Woe, sexual assault Kashikabi Bonithi, post-mortem. Report adalah bataya ke uski maut pit parhengan sama ari goli sawi. Goli ki koi nishani ya shel sin parnahi milimagar ek choti sichis ni por case karak high badal daya and net ki paran main sayek main orange rang kabuti sok. Tha.uska match wohi sok thea jo babra ke pas se mila thea. Yeah connection police ke laek shok thea. Dono oratini kairia kithi. Dono hikathin lapata wi. Dono kohan gun se godi marigayi. Or dono ki lashin. Dordor, or alagalag whacked. Parmili, Fiabi, in eerily similar details Niek Hai Darawani Natija Diadono Koek Hai Shaks, Ni Ek Hirot Main Ma Dia Thajab, Police Ni Timeline Jodni Ki Koshishki, 2 Unki Shak, Kisoi Jeff Oberholzer, Barbara Kashuher, Kitaraf Gumi, Investigation Main Pata Chala K Jeff Ni Anet Ko Pehol Kabi Hitchhiking Kat Hu Uthaya Tha or US Apna Business Card B Dia Tha Jeff Ni Ye Bot Kabul Ki Likan Uska Kena Tha Ki Uski Bot Anet Se Uska Koi Lina Dina Nahi Tha Jeff Ni Pehol Din Se Dawa Kia K Woas Rot Apnigar Par Tha Ek Duske Sof Likan Wo Dust Police K Salmon Nahi Jish Sheikh or Jaraho Gaya Salo Ta Jeff Pa Sheikha Sayaraha Fear December 1990 Main Wo Dust Okasam E or Jeff Key Alibi KO Confirm Kio Summit County Sheriff's Department Ni Fear Jeff Ko Dono Murders Say Officially Clear Kardaya Jeff Nibot Main Kahaki Sabs Ziada Takalifis Bot Kithi Kisurf Police Hai Nahi Logbias Kuni Samaj Lage the Bug Mujap Nigar Main Nahi Dekna Chait The Jeff Ni Kaha Leakin Ek Cheese Joe Badalti Nahi Thi Sabut or Woe Sabut the DNA samples Joe Whacked K Soth Carefully Preserve Kige the Jab Cold Case Parnae Efforts Shiruhu to investigators Ni Ye Genetic Evidence Ek Public Genealogy Database Main Upload Card Dia Igel Kuch Salentak Detectives or Genetic Experts Ni Milkas DNA Koras Konki Koshishiari Ominous yet calm music fades and investigators continued their search for the truth quietly, patiently, relying on one of the most advanced tools in modern forensics, familial DNA tracing. By comparing crime scene DNA to profiles in public genealogy databases, researchers hoped to identify potential relatives of the unknown killer. Their efforts finally bore fruit. A partial match emerged, a familial link. That breakthrough narrowed the search to a specific bloodline, which eventually led to the name Alan Lee Phillips, a retired auto mechanic. To confirm their lead without alerting the suspect, investigators employed a discreet strategy. They followed Phillips and waited until he discarded a napkin into a public trash can. The napkin was carefully recovered, handled under strict forensic protocols to preserve the chain of custody and prevent any contamination. The DNA on the napkin was then compared to the genetic material preserved from the scenes of Barbara Joe Oberholzer and Annette Schnee's murders. The results were undeniable, a perfect match. On February 24, 2021, nearly 40 years after the crimes, law enforcement conducted a strategic traffic stop and took Alan Lee Phillips into custody. At long last, there was a name, a face, and evidence that directly tied him to both killings. Prosecutors charged Phillips with 2 counts each of first-degree murder with deliberation, first-degree kidnapping, first-degree assault with a deadly weapon. The trial moved forward, driven by the enduring strength of the evidence collected decades earlier and now by the undeniable power of DNA. During the proceedings, an eerie detail came to light. On the very night the murders occurred, in January 1982, Phillips' truck had reportedly gotten stuck in a blizzard high in the Colorado mountains. Unbeknownst to rescuers at the time, they were about to save the very man who had just committed 2 brutal crimes. Trapped in the storm, Phillips used his truck's headlights to flash SOS in Morse code. His signal was seen by a sheriff flying overhead on a commercial jet. A rescue mission was launched. One of the men who helped retrieve him, local fire chief Dave Montoya, remembered Phillips had a prominent bruise on his face. Phillips explained it away, claiming he fell while wandering through the snow. But years later, investigators would suspect a different cause, that Barbara fought back, striking him with a brass keyring made specially by her husband, Jeff, a self-defense tool for emergencies. Justice would finally be delivered. On August 31, 2022, a jury found Phillips guilty on all counts. The court sentenced him to 2 consecutive life sentences, closing the door on one of Colorado's most haunting cold cases. But closure was short-lived. Less than 6 months into his sentence, Phillips took his own life while incarcerated. He was 72 years old. He left behind no confession, no explanation, just the trail of pain he inflicted and the silence he chose to die with. But thanks to dogged investigators, preserved evidence, and groundbreaking forensic technology, he was held accountable. Before the end, music fades, and a new story begins. Danny Goldman, Surfside, Florida, March 1966. The quiet beachside town was shattered by an unimaginable event. On the morning of his 18th birthday, Danny Goldman, a promising high school senior, was kidnapped from his home and vanished without a trace. Somber music fades in, low, emotional piano tones. Danny Goldman, March 28, 1966, Surfside, Florida. Just one day before his 18th birthday, Danny Goldman had his life and his family's world ripped apart in the early hours of a quiet Florida morning. A bright, focused student with a strong academic record, Danny was already set to attend the University of Miami, but all his plans and dreams came to a halt before the sun even rose at approximately 4:30 a.m. While Danny and his parents, Aaron and Sally Goldman, slept peacefully in their home, a man broke in through an unlocked sliding glass door. He was described as husky, with a noticeable limp, wearing a cap but no mask. He carried a gun and walked straight into the master bedroom as if he knew exactly where to go. Addressing the couple by their first names, the intruder was eerily calm yet unmistakably threatening. He demanded $10,000 in cash, a large sum, especially in 1966, and one the Goldmans simply didn't have on hand. When Aaron and Sally explained they couldn't produce the money, the man's demeanor shifted. He suddenly announced a terrifying alternative. "I'm going to hold Danny for security." He raised his demand to $25,000, then proceeded to bind Danny with cords and tape, physically restraining him. The intruder forced Danny into the family's car and drove off into the dark, leaving Aaron and Sally behind in stunned, powerless horror. He had told them he would call at 6 p.m. with further instructions, but that call never came. Danny Goldman, just hours away from turning 18, was never seen again in the days that followed. The stolen family car was located, abandoned, but untouched. Beyond that, there were no letters, no phone calls, no ransom demands. Danny had vanished without a trace. What began as a home invasion quickly spiraled into a full-scale missing persons investigation. Authorities scoured the neighborhood, combed the area for clues, and chased every lead. But no answers came. No fingerprints, no sightings, no suspect. Just silence. As days turned to weeks and weeks into months, hope began to fade. The investigation continued with urgency, but frustration grew with every dead end. Detectives struggled with one central question: was this a random act of violence, or did the intruder know the Goldmans personally? Despite widespread media coverage and public concern, the case went cold. No solid suspect ever emerged, and as the years passed, the mystery deepened. Danny's close friend, David Grobart, later said, "We thought he would be back in 2 or 3 days, somehow, with this crazy story to tell." But that story never came. Aaron and Sally Goldman lived the rest of their lives with the pain of not knowing. Aaron passed away in 2010. Sally in 2012, having never discovered what happened to their only child. No answers, no justice, no closure. The home that once echoed with the laughter and future of a brilliant young man remained a space, marked forever by absence and grief. But Danny's friends refused to let his story disappear. In the years that followed, they fought to keep his memory alive, ensuring his disappearance would never be forgotten. They worked to keep his case in the public eye, hoping that someday someone would come forward, or some breakthrough would emerge. Because, even decades later, hope, no matter how faint, still lingered. Music fades, a cold case still waiting for resolution. Tense, reflective music begins, strings softly playing in the background. In the years following Danny Goldman's disappearance, a small group of his childhood friends refused to let the case fade into silence. They called themselves the Posy, a nickname rooted in friendship, now repurposed for purpose. For them, Danny's story wasn't over, not even close. The group included David Grobart, his younger brother Joe, and their longtime friends, Anthony Blake, Harvey Leica, and Paul Novak. Paul, who spent his own money chasing down leads, summed it up best: basically, our decision was that it would be completely wrong for Danny to be forgotten. How does a 17-year-old get taken out of his family home at 5 in the morning, and then years later, it's like it never happened, like he never happened? Danny had no siblings. His parents were gone. There was no one left to fight for justice, but they weren't about to let that be the end. What began as a deeply personal mission, an act of love for a lost friend, slowly evolved into something larger, an independent investigation that would unravel a chilling web of corruption, betrayal, and organized crime. And the truth was far more sinister than anyone had imagined. The friends discovered that Danny's abduction had little to do with ransom. Instead, the motive lay buried in the past, rooted in actions taken by Danny's father, Aaron Goldman, years before the kidnapping. Aaron, a board member at the now-defunct 5 Points Bank, had alerted federal agents to a suspicious pattern: unsecured loans flowing in and out of the bank, often in the form of cash and high-value assets, being funneled to local power players and even government officials. Whether Aaron realized it or not at the time, the bank was functioning as a money laundering front. His whistleblowing had threatened to expose a criminal network, one tied to financial fraud, political influence, and mob operations. And in that world, such betrayal doesn't go unanswered. Mobsters tied to the laundering ring saw Aaron's actions as a dangerous and unforgivable threat, and they responded not with legal action or intimidation, but with a calculated strike on the one thing he valued most: his son. From 2012 to 2022. The Posey pored over decades-old police reports, archived documents, and forgotten testimonies. They dug deep, pulling at threads that reached back nearly a century, connecting everything from low-level criminals to powerful figures. Then, finally, they found something: a fingerprint that had been left behind on the sliding glass door. The night Danny was taken, investigators at the time had missed its significance. But now, with new forensic tools and fresh eyes, the print was matched to a man named George DeFess, a mob associate with a violent history. It was later discovered that DeFess had not put on his gloves until after he entered the Goldman home, a critical mistake that, decades later, revealed his identity. Another lead surfaced: a Canadian-made rubber glove found at the scene. Paul Novak traced it to a Brooklyn medical clinic, the only facility in the region using that particular brand. Clinic records confirmed DeFess had once been a patient there and had been living in New York during the time of the kidnapping. Soon, another name emerged: Joe Cacciatore, a known associate of DeFess. The two men had a history together in the criminal underworld, and evidence pointed to their joint involvement in Danny's abduction and likely his death. The final, painful truth was as haunting as it was inevitable. Investigators now believe Danny was killed shortly after being taken, and his body disposed of in the Atlantic Ocean, ensuring that he would never be found. Neither George DeFess nor Joe Cacciatore were ever brought to trial. Both men have since passed away, taking the secrets of that night with them to the grave. Music fades to near silence, but thanks to 5 friends who refused to give up, thanks to a group that turned heartbreak into investigation, Danny's, the story was not forgotten. And the shadows that once hid the truth were finally brought into the light. Somber piano music rises, fading in softly. Though the men responsible for Danny Goldman's disappearance would never face trial, their identification marked a powerful turning point. For those closest to Danny, knowing the truth finally brought closure, an end to decades of silence, questions, and heartache. Among the most moving discoveries in the case was a handwritten letter by Sally Goldman, Danny's mother. In it, she made a heartbreaking plea urging the public and authorities never to forget her son, though she passed away without ever knowing what became of him. Her wish was not forgotten. The Posey Danny's loyal group of childhood friends had honored her plea. Their tireless work ensured that the story of Danny Goldman wouldn't disappear into obscurity. Though his remains have never been found, they take comfort in knowing they kept their promise. The mystery of Danny's disappearance, one that haunted South Florida for generations, has finally been solved, bringing a measure of peace to those who never gave up. Music shifts, new chapter begins, slightly darker tones. Nicole Smith, Atlanta, Georgia, June 1995. The next case began, like so many others, with a life full of promise and ended in sudden, senseless tragedy. Nicole Smith was born in 1981, a bright, ambitious student attending a local middle school in Atlanta. Her academic performance was exceptional, and she looked forward to a milestone she had worked hard to reach: her middle school graduation. Nicole had dreams. One of them was wearing a white dress for the ceremony, a tradition that, to her, symbolized achievement, pride, and the beginning of a hopeful future. On the morning of June 7, 1995, 14-year-old Nicole started her day like any other. She left home with her sister and a group of friends, walking along Campbell Road, a familiar route to school, part of her daily routine. But that morning, Nicole suddenly realized she had forgotten an important assignment. Not wanting her hard work to go to waste, she made the responsible decision to head back home and retrieve it. To save time, she took a shortcut through a wooded area near a nearby apartment complex, a path she had likely passed before, one that felt safe, in the comfort of daylight. But that one decision, made out of discipline and diligence, led her into an isolated space where a predator was waiting. Police later confirmed that while cutting through the wooded area, Nicole was brutally assaulted and then shot twice in the face by an unknown assailant. She died at the scene. The violence of the attack stunned the community. Soon after the crime, Nicole's body was discovered, and the Atlanta Police Department quickly mobilized. Detectives interviewed neighbors, canvassed the area, and followed every lead. Community members stepped forward with information. Police worked around the clock trying to retrace Nicole's last steps and identify her killer. But despite their urgency and relentless efforts, answers did not come. Music softens, emotional and reflective tones return despite the best efforts of investigators. Nicole Smith's case remained unsolved. As the years passed and leads grew scarce, The trail went cold, and with it, the hopes of a community longing for justice. Nicole's family was left to live in the shadow of grief, without answers or accountability. Then, nearly a decade later, a startling development reignited the investigation. In 2004, in the East Point suburb of southwest Atlanta, another horrific incident occurred. A 13-year-old black girl named Betty Brown reported that she had been indecently assaulted. Investigators collected DNA evidence from the assault, and the results revealed a chilling truth. The DNA matched the genetic material from Nicole Smith's 1995 case. This revelation confirmed what many feared. The same man had attacked both, with children, nearly a decade apart. But while the DNA linked the two crimes, the suspect's identity still remained unknown. There was no name, no face, just genetic evidence tied to two devastated lives. Years continued to pass. The case stalled again. Then, in January 2022, the Atlanta Police Department made a historic announcement. Using the powerful tool of forensic genetic genealogy, a technique that combines advanced DNA testing with family tree research, authorities had finally cracked the case. By tracing genetic markers across generations and matching them with public genealogy databases, detectives were able to zero in on the man behind the attacks. It had taken nearly 27 years, but they had a name. The man responsible was identified as Kevin Arnold, a 49-year-old who had died just 5 months earlier, in August 2021, from complications related to liver and kidney failure. He was gone, and with him the opportunity to face justice. For Nicole Smith's mother, the identification of Kevin Arnold brought a complicated, bittersweet mix of emotions. "I never imagined this person would be deceased," she said. "So many unanswered questions I had for him that I can never ask and never get answers. But I would never say it was closure for me, because I will live with this pain for the rest of my life." She later embraced Betty Brown, the second known victim, now a grown woman herself who had carried her trauma silently for years. "This has been a part of my life I had hidden," Betty said, her voice filled with hurt and conflict. "I didn't want to live in that pain anymore. On one hand, I want to rise above and not let this control me. But on the other hand, to want his family to suffer because he's not here to suffer. I want them to feel the pain that my family has felt for years." Though Kevin Arnold will never be tried, his identification finally brought the truth into the light, a long-awaited reckoning for two young girls, a grieving mother, and a community that had never stopped hoping for justice. Music fades to a soft, solemn close.